Welcome to Ask Preston. One of the author questions that I'm most often asked is it better to try to get my book published or to self-publish my book? And that's a great question, and there's not a very simple answer to it. It really depends on yourself and your needs and what you want to do, but let's break it down. So we're going to split this into two parts. This is part one, which we're going to focus on the pros and cons of getting traditionally published with your book. Before we start, just a quick word. This is presented by sellmorebooks.blog, which provides author trainings and teaches you how to have success with your book selling on Amazon and other online services. And we're here to help you to get the message out, to impact the world with your stories or your self-help books, or whatever it is that you do. We are centered on faith-based and people with a real message that they want to get out to the world, and we're here to help you to achieve that. And who am I? I am an author coach. I provide self-publishing services such as editing, interior design, cover design, and the like. And I am a publisher of 15 books. And those books earn around $7,000 a month. So we're doing pretty well with that for a small indie publisher. So is it better to be published or to self-publish? So if you're looking to get published through a traditional book publisher, let's look at the pros first, because those are very easy to knock off. The biggest pro in my mind is the fact that you get an advance. So as soon as you sign a deal with a book publisher, they're giving you a check, and typically for about $5,000, could be more, might be less, but you're typically looking around the $5,000 range. Check in hand, you cash that, and you're done. You can move on to the next book. You don't have to think about it anymore, and really you're better off not thinking about it anymore. The next thing is your book is going to be professionally done. So there will be professional layout, professional cover. They're going to take care of everything. It's going to be a great looking book. And the third pro is that book will be in brick and mortar bookstores, most likely. It's not 100% guaranteed, but they will be, if it's produced by a traditional book publisher, then you can be pretty confident that the majority of bookstores, or at least some of them, will buy your book and carry it in stores. And that's always wonderful to see your book in print in a bookstore for people to buy. And the last point, the last real pro in my mind, is you can brag now that you are a published author. However, that brag is becoming ever more insubstantial, because most authors nowadays would rather be the successful self-published author than a author who's been traditionally published but not really seen much from it. So let's look at the cons. What are the cons of going through a traditional publisher? The biggest con to me is it's going to take years. You have to realize that when you are submitting to traditional publishers, professional decorum is that you submit to one publisher at a time. And it's not that you submit it to them and a week later they say yes or no. Typically, they'll take 3 to 6 months to get back to you. And in fact, the vast majority of the cases, you are going to get a no. And that's not necessarily even a reflection of the quality of your book. It may not just be what they're looking for right now. So we've all heard stories of how many times Stephen King and J.K. Rowling and other famous authors have been rejected over and over and over again. So you can expect that you'll probably get 12 rejections from traditional publishers before you finally get one that says, yes, they're interested in doing it. So you just work that math. If you're sending it to them one at a time and it's taking on average 4 months for them to get back to you, that's a long time. You're waiting years before you're going to get that book published. You can send it to multiple publishers. Again, professional decorum says you inform them that you're submitting it to multiple publishers, but if they see that, they are less likely to even read it. So do with that as you may. And even once you get a publisher interested, they're most likely going to want some rewrites. So you have to factor that time in. And then once you finally, yes, we're going to buy it, you sign the contract, it's a done deal. It still takes usually around 18 months before that book will actually be printed and shipped out. So, you know, when you are going to traditional publishers, it's, you know, you've got one book written and that's being submitted out and you're working on a next book. So you can actually be on your fourth book and still trying to get that first book published or waiting for it to go out to print. So it's very much a long game. Now, today, most publishers won't even look at your book. They'll want your book to come through a literary agent, which means before you can even start submitting to publishers, you got to submit your book to literary agents. And just like publishers, most of them are going to say, no, not good enough, not what I'm looking for, not my field. So you've got to go through this whole process again with literary agents before you can even start having it submitted to publishers, adding even more time onto this. And because publishers are all risk adverse these days, they are looking for people who have an existing following. So if you already have a social following, you're already some kind of celebrity or neo-celebrity, or, you know, somebody who's got some traction on the ground already, you're more likely to get published than if nobody follows you at all, which for a lot of us writers who like to just kind of hide away and do our craft and not be in the public's face, that can be quite a lot of us. Once you do sign a deal with a publisher, they own the book. It's no longer yours. They own it. They have all the rights to it. And so what happens to it after it initially gets printed is completely up to them, and you have no say whatsoever. And we'll get back to this in a second. They're looking for books with broad appeal. So what do I mean by this? So because publishers aren't selling to end consumers, they're selling to bookstores, and bookstores are looking for books so they can be confident they can sell to a certain number of people, let's say 30, just for a number. So if you're writing an urban fiction, say, unless you are already well established with a good track record in urban fiction, you're very unlikely to get anyone to publish your book, because the perception will be it won't sell enough at any given bookstore for any bookstore to want to order that book, unless it's like downtown somewhere. And that's not enough of those to make it worth the publisher's while. So you have to have a broader appeal. Despite being in bookstores, your book may not sell at all. And in fact, even though publishers have professional book editors whose sole job is to pick the winners from the losers, 80% of the books that traditional book publishers sell fail. That means it does go to the bookstores, but they don't sell well enough. The bookstores send back all the copies that didn't sell. They get destroyed. The publisher loses some money, and that book never sees the light of day again. So we'll get back to that when we talk about self-publishing, because when you're self-publishing, that book could still be a hit for you as a self-publisher, but it is a failure for a traditional publisher. And because they own the rights, that your book is now dead. You can't republish that book. You don't own it. And so it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the books are going to fail. 20% of the books will be successful. But even of that 20%, only 20% of the 20% get reprinted. So they go to a second, third, or fourth reprinting. The other 80% that were successful cover their costs, make a bit of money, but generally aren't deemed worthwhile to go to a second printing. So that advance that you got, that's all the money you will ever see. But let's say your book is a hit. They sell all the first printing, they go into a second printing. So you are now receiving book royalties, and you can expect to earn 6% of the cover price. So if it's a $10 book, you're making 60 cents per book sold. If you're an established author who has some sway or celebrity, you can maybe get 12% of that cover price. Compare that to the 70% you will earn off of self-publishing an ebook on Amazon. And the last con, when you are traditionally self-publishing, and this is probably the biggest single misconception that would-be authors have, is that the traditional publisher will not be marketing your book. They will market a book if you're an established author or a celebrity, and they're guaranteed to have a good return on investment. But if you're an unknown author, they are not spending any money marketing your book other than the bare minimum of promoting it to the bookstore owners. So all of the marketing falls on your hand. So you still have to go out there and market your book in order if you expect to ever make more money than the advance that you've been given. So, and if you're going to do that, you're probably just better off self-publishing it in the first place. So we'll look at the pros and cons of self-publishing in the next video. You can find the link to that below. If you find this useful, please hit the subscribe button, link, comment. If you have a question you'd like me to answer, you can put it in the comments below, or go to PrestonSquirePublishing.com and put it in the Ask Preston section, and I will answer it in a future video. Otherwise, feel free to check out our free webinar at sellmorebooks.blog to help you get your book published, or our author services at PrestonSquirePublishing.com.